What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy Alarm College Football live stream here for week 2. I'm here with my guy Pete, and we're just previewing the slate, reacting to any injury news, providing those for you, and giving you some lineup advice because we both got these early and night slate playbooks covered for you at DFS Alarm, Fantasy Alarm. Pete, how are we doing today?
Doing good, right? Saturday, college football.
Yeah.
Second weekend in a row. That's best time of year. I'm still stressed out. I get stressed out every Saturday, and I get stressed out more as we were talking before the show with injuries and quarterbacks, and we got burned last night.
I
A little bit, some of
know.
us using the quarterback that was announced out after the game started. But hopefully we can plow through this today a little bit, and we don't have that problem today. So I think it's a good slate. We got a good slate ahead of us. So
Yeah. To mention last night, I mean, for those of us that played last night, I mean, North Carolina A&T, who would have thought that team would give us like tilts, making lineups?
The receiver too, both the quarterback
And the receiver, yeah. So that's how last night went. But we're flipping the page. We got a brand new full day slate here. And if you go to dfsalarm.com/get8cfb, that's the college football DFS package we have for you all season long. You can save 25% with code NCAA. I have the main slate playbook, and this is all we will be doing it all year. Me and Pete's splitting up the two slates for you. The night slate Pete has. So if you go there right now, both playbooks are up. Build lineups for both. FanDuel has they have their all-day slate, so you can kind of pick and choose different plays from both of our playbooks and build lineups there. But we're kind of previewing, focusing mainly on DraftKings early slate with the games kicking off at noon Eastern and the afternoon up until 3:30 and 4 o'clock Eastern. So we're going to focus on those games. And just to run through some of the teams and the games that you should maybe be looking at first, according to Vegas's odds, the highest totals we have today, Ohio State, Oregon, that's a 63.5 over under, and Ohio State's 14-point favorites in that. Florida, South Florida, that's a 58.5, but basically we're just looking at Florida because they're 28-point favorites in that one. Ball State at Penn State, 58 over under. Penn State is 22-point favorites. Pittsburgh, Tennessee, a sneaky game on the slate, 57 over under, and Pitt is 3-point favorites right now. And then South Carolina, East Carolina, another sneaky game, 57 over under, and South Carolina is 2-point favorites currently. But yeah, just going through and then some of the bigger favorites that have the highest implied team totals that we're definitely looking at, and we'll go through position by position some of the guys on each of these teams. Florida, Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Texas A&M. Those are kind of the top 6 teams that we're looking at in that order of highest implied team totals according to Vegas's odds. So, Pete, we're going to just get into this. I mean, any first impressions on the slate when you're looking at any of these teams involved, any of the matchups that you're like, first glance, you're like, oh, I'm targeting that game or this player?
Well, one thing I do know is that it's like, you want like talking core plays. I think there's like it's pretty much 3 or 4 plays that pretty much everybody's going to be on, cash players. And then what's going to make the difference is picking that second quarterback. I think right away, like Clifford, Spiller, Garrett Wilson. I think Kyron Williams and Notre Dame. They're like your 4 key players. Me personally, and what I'm seeing ownership wise, it's pretty much driving the ownership. And then it's pretty much deciding who we're going to pick on that super flex, which we talked about, off air. And then we got to find our value receiver. And then pretty much a second running back. And I think that's going to be the key of the day. Those 4 or 5 other picks. But it looks like it's pretty straightforward for like half your lineup.
Yeah. You mentioned all those guys, and I wrote about it. Actually, I think all the ones you just mentioned in our playbook. So go check that out for like more in depth, or if you're looking for kind of just more words, written words on those guys while you're building lineups and listening to us, watching us. So let's start the quarterback position. And you mentioned Clifford, so that's definitely a name we're looking at. I think there's like, it's between him. Kenny Pickett is another name. C.J. Stroud for Ohio State. I think those are like the three. Like people are looking at that in cash. I personally am just staying away from Emory Jones of Florida because he's splitting time with Richardson. So that's not a name I'm looking at. Jack Cohn is a GPP, but
Yep.
you mentioned Kyron Williams in Notre Dame's backfield. Like that's the name I'm looking for if I'm looking at Notre Dame. Not really their passing game today as big favorites, but between Stroud, Pickett, and Clifford, that's kind of the decision I feel like right now, right?
Yeah, and especially we've seen Oregon's defense. I mean, I'm on Clifford pretty much as my SP1. Was he really sharp last week? No. He only completed 54% of his throws, which is not great for Clifford. But once again, Wisconsin is a good defense, or top 10 defense, on the road. So he didn't run much, but we do know Clifford can run, and we know that. I just think I'm not even going to overthink Clifford. I think Clifford is your play. To me, the question is, as we talked before, is where do we go with the two? Because first we got Stroud, and we do have. I guess we can bring it up now. Is there is some concerns about Stroud and some injuries. Now, there's notes all over the industry. I'm seeing all the message boards that technically he only got in one practice all week, one limited practice. He had a shoulder injury, which he actually suffered in the second half of last week's game. So pretty much McCord is taking all the first team snaps in practice all week. But everything we're seeing is Stroud is still going to be starting. I don't want anybody jumping off Stroud and running the other way. But there is some concerns here on how deep we can go. Like I said, if you look at the message boards, it's crazy. It's crazy about him. And at first I was seeing he was 50-50 to play and all that, but he did practice Thursday. But there is questions, that McCord is there, and that, if something goes wrong, honestly, that may be enough to push me off him though, at that 8.6 price when you got.
It's a lot. Yeah,
it is. And to me, Kenny Pickett is probably more of a GPP play. I'm a huge Kenny Pickett guy. I've always been. But I got to, same with the Syracuse guys. I got to get that fandom out of my mind and for DFS purposes, because, he is Pickett's a good quarterback. To me, he's more of an NFL quarterback, but still, Pickett can get it done. So he completes 73% of his passes, 2 touchdowns over UMass. Once again, it's UMass, but it's a good offense. It's a fast offense. I was just reading somewhere that they ran a play once every 21.5 seconds last week. So which is probably top 10 fastest of the week. You should see him probably gonna jump up like 25 seconds this week. But I think Pickett's in play more of a GBP play. So then drops us down to your guy, and you kind of turn me around with him a little bit, the Brown kid. So what do you think about Brown? Because now I'm down to like an Anthony Brown, or I think it's a wild card is holding hours for ECU. Talk me into Anthony Brown.
Yeah, well, Anthony Brown's interesting. So this game, so we saw last week with Minnesota against Ohio State. The defense of Ohio State was not great for most of that game, and basically until Minnesota's stud running back, one of the best in the country, Mohamed Ibrahim, went down with an injury. They were getting torched on the ground. They were getting beat up. Minnesota was covering in that game for the whole time. They were leading in the third quarter at one point, and it was definitely on the ground that they were doing that. When you look at Oregon's offense, it's, they got Anthony Brown as the dual threat, and he's, transferred from Boston College, ran a lot there. Oregon, last year he only played in a couple games, so we haven't really seen him, open up as the starter, full dual threat that we get to see usually. But this year, he might have that free reign to kind of be the playmaker in this offense that we're used to seeing from these Oregon quarterbacks in recent years. And last week against Fresno, they were in a close game, and he had 16 rushing attempts for 56 yards and a touchdown. Didn't pass a whole lot. I guess because they kind of had the lead, but he was kind of like that game manager rushing wise. Even in an offense that has a couple of solid backs and C.J. Verdell and Travis Dye, they're just not really getting it done. And if I'm looking at this Oregon team, I'm not really looking at both of them, because they're splitting work, and it's hard to trust either one right now. They're both kind of cheap on this slate, but it's I think them against the Ohio State defense isn't really where I want to go. Besides, just because I think Oregon's going to be trailing in this one. The road factor against Ohio State is a slight worry, but
Right.
I just think that Brown is going to be. This total is high, 63.5. And it's not like Oregon, it's not like a big total where Oregon is, 4-score underdogs in this. It's 2-touchdown game. So it'll be pretty tight throughout, I think. And it might just turn into a shootout where both offenses are going off. And, I think we'll want to share at least of this Oregon offense if that's the way it ends up. And you mentioned if you're going like Stroud, you can easily do a Stroud Brown pairing, put Brown in the super flex and build a good lineup that way. Especially if you have, Garrett Wilson, receiver from Ohio State, you can fit one of these cheap Oregon wide receivers in there and just kind of build a mini game stack. I think that's a really good lineup build, honestly. What are your thoughts on Brown? You trust him? The 6,900 price tag on DraftKings isn't too bad,
No, and I think the only thing that would push me off, Oregon quarterback, is that they're on the road. But I love these Joe Moorhead quarterbacks because they're going to run. He ran 16 times. I know everybody last week was calling for the freshman, but this kid, Brown's playing, and I think you're going to get 15, 16, 17 carries. Yes, Ohio State on the road is a little bit different. So I totally love that as a game stack with Stroud, definitely. If the being away in Ohio State pushes me off Brown, the only other player I'm looking at, me personally, is going now the kid from ECU, is Holton Ahlers. And I like Holton Ahlers. He's a lefty. This is a kid that's going to give you a lot of volume. 40 passes, 295 yards last week against Appalachian State is at a really good defense. So, he carried the ball 12. He didn't get many yards, but he carried the ball 12 times. So, plus we're looking at an implied like 27-28. That's not bad. So if we got an implied of like 27-28, we're looking at maybe 4 touchdowns. So, and I kind of like Ahlers. I have him right there with Brown. Pretty much all week I was looking at Stroud and Clifford. But now with these Stroud questions, when there is some other decent quarterbacks, so I want to take that chance in cash with Stroud when he may be, leaving in a second or third quarter. I just don't want to get, I don't want to be overreacting here either, and saying Stroud's not playing, he's going to get hurt. But it is out there that he is hurting. So, he takes one hit or it's a blowout, we may not see him the whole game. So I'm almost down to Ahlers, Anthony Brown, and that $200 difference between Ahlers and Brown 69, could possibly push me to Brown. I think everybody else is GBP plays. You got Emory Jones, GBP play only. It's high implied. Kenny Pickett, love him. I think he's GBP too because of the price. I'm not on guys I'm not on Haynes King. It's pretty much, I'm not on the Notre Dame quarterback. Max Dugan, not really. TCU. These are all GBP plays. So it's kind of broken. I guess we got to cut down. There's 4 players for cash. But to me, Clifford is a shoo-in, and then I got to side on the next 2 between Stroud, for Anthony Brown, and Holton Ahlers.
Yeah, Clifford's going to be popular for sure because you got Penn State as the second highest implied team total on the slate behind Florida right now. And Florida's, that's going to be a blowout game. We just don't know where the DFS production is going to come from, they got 2 quarterbacks, they got multiple running backs. It's really hard to pinpoint which of those guys. They're all GPP plays for sure, but for cash, it's tough to trust any of them. But Penn State, you know where it's coming from, and they're 22-point favorites. But I still think like this is a Penn State team that, you know, they're playing at home. They're gonna want to like show out offensively and get a convincing win, I think. And this
Definitely.
total is still pretty high at 58 over under. But I think the Penn State offense though, and we'll get to the running backs in a second. But you know, you look at Noah Kane is like a one of the top running backs I was looking at. Clifford, you know, you got his receivers, Dotson, Washington. You know, they have a cheap Lambert Smith, right? He's a cheap receiver on the slate.
Yep.
But so you can easily stack a couple Penn State guys for sure. That's an option. We had it. By the way, you guys can all hit us up on the Discord channel right now, Fantasy Alarm Discord, in the hashtag CFB chat right now. The discussion there, and we got an option here. Someone said Dugan. Are we? So you mentioned him. Even he's a GPP option, but I think it's tough to trust. The TCU offense is always, in the last couple of years, is always tough to predict. I mean, and Dugan's hit or miss for me. I mean, he could easily, he's got the dual threat upside. He could easily run for 3 touchdowns in this game for sure. But I also just don't know how much I want to play him over other guys, especially when he's more expensive than Stroud, Pickett, Clifford, and those are guys I want to play,
And I did use Max Dugan a bit last year. I remember a
Yeah,
couple
me
games
too.
actually having some big Saturdays. But I think Cal is a decent opponent.
It's a weird non-conference game,
Yeah, and Dugan he wasn't really need that much last week, especially on the ground. I think he had 1 carry, maybe 2 against Duquesne. But he did average, let me see, 10.9 yards per attempt, which actually was higher than last year. So one thing about Cal is I'm seeing they allowed 8 yards per attempt to Nevada. So, I mean, you may see some deep throws, but definitely at that price, that's a GPP call. Because you got a bunch of guys. I mean, maybe you can hook him up with Quentin Johnson. That's his one. They got a running back by committee, so I can't really be messing with the running backs. But Dugan is definitely a GBP at that price. Same like a Jack Cohn. It could be great to to play a Jack Cohn with a Michael Mayer or something like that. But GBP's only because ain't no way am I spend that kind of money when I can get like a Holt Nailers at 7-1 or Anthony Brown at 6'9". You know what I mean? There's no. I'm seeing Joe Milton at the same price as Sean Clifford. That's just not. That's not right.
Yeah, and just going back to that game, you mentioned Milton. So the Pickett option for Pitt and Pitt's offense is definitely going to be. I think people are going to look to this offense, especially the passing game, just because of the potential for an offensive shootout. So it's worth noting the total has actually gone down in that game. I mentioned it earlier, it was 57. It's actually gone down to 55.5 right now, and Pitt is 3.5-point favorites. So maybe they're thinking the Tennessee offense won't match up to Pitt as much in this game, even though they're at home. But still, like Tennessee is a team that, they got Josh Hoople coming over from UCF, bringing that fast-paced, offense that they're gonna run. They're gonna run tempo. They're gonna try to keep it up and going. And Pitt has the offense to kind of keep pace and probably best them in that. That's what Vegas is saying, and I agree. I think they're gonna win this game. So that's a game that could end up going back and forth, and Pickett is the guy that's going to be the beneficiary of that. But on the same side, the South Carolina East Carolina game could end up being the same exact thing because that game's at 56.5 over under right now, and South Carolina is just barely a 2.5-point favorite. But that's a game where I'm not really scared off by South Carolina's defense right now. And East Carolina could definitely put up some points on them, and it'll be through Ehlers, I think. So I like that call by you. Yeah.
Actually, before we jump away from quarterback, I was going to ask you too, because usually if I'm multi-entering, say I'm entering 15, 20 lineups and something. I always try to look for the one really cheap quarterback maybe I can throw in there. And I'm looking today, and there's not a real lot that I like. The only one that I see, I mean, I don't want to. Yeah, I'll play Tommy DeVito because I'm a Syracuse guy, but the one guy that kind of is piquing my interest a little bit is Drew Plitt from Ball State. And yet it's against Penn State. We know they're going to be playing from behind. I mean, you may see a bunch of garbage time. If you're looking at at Vegas, I mean, we're looking at possibly 2 touchdowns from Ball State, and if it is, it's going to come from the air. So, I mean, they're in Penn State, so in that Penn State stadium, which could get crazy, but. I like that whole Johannes Tyler, Justin Hall matchup too. We played them a lot last year, Matt. In the Matt game, so I have a little bit of knowledge as a lot of these guys. But I kind of like Drew Plitt a little bit, and of course GBP only. If you're multi-entering, but he's the one guy that kind of sparks my attention a little bit down there. I just wonder if there's anybody you see down there that's playable also. There's not much.
Well, Plitt's definitely one of them. I mean, I wrote him up in the playbook actually because this game could end up just being Penn State. I don't know what to expect from Penn State's defense because last week's game against Wisconsin was really hard to judge. I think from a real life and fantasy standpoint. And by the way, this is what week 2 is. We're all just trying to figure out which of these teams are what is real about these teams, and especially for DFS, like, you might have a huge game in week 1, but how real is that going into week 2, and vice versa? If a player or team struggled, how real is that going into the next week? And Penn State's defense, I mean, they let up a ton of rushing yards to Wisconsin last week, but the Wisconsin's passing game is not strong. It's never been strong. So like when they're facing a passing offense like Ball State has been the last few years. I mean, Drew Plitt has thrown for over 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns the last couple seasons. And, you mentioned it last year on the MAC only slate. He was always a guy we looked at.
Yep.
And I think, they're going to be trailing. We know that for sure. So it's like, are we going to get these garbage time passing yards, and how much is he actually going to provide there? I mean, 6,100 is very cheap. So I don't mind that at all, especially, if you're looking in cash and you just want to like game stack the Penn State Ball State game, why not just have Clifford and Plitt in the same one? So I don't mind that at all. I think it's worth mentioning just before we move on to running backs here, the Georgia quarterback situation, and Georgia's big favorites in this over UAB. So maybe it doesn't matter as much, and the game's at 3:30, so it's kind of something we have to monitor. But JT Daniels is doubtful for Georgia. But I mean, if he's out, I mean, we don't really have word on who is going to get the most playing time between Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett. Bennett was there last year, but Beck is kind of the guy that's gotten more buzz, I think, in camp, and apparently, reportedly might be the guy that gets the most playing time. But if it ends up where it's like we get word before kickoff and it's Stetson Bennett is the starter, he's 4,500 on DraftKings, which is amazing for a quarterback, especially when you're the quarterback of a big favorite like Georgia. So
what's Carson Beck?
Carson Beck's 7,000. So like that's huge.
It's a huge. All right. You know what? And that.
I think both are just unplayable. Like I wouldn't plan on playing either one, but like say it's it's 3:00, 30 minutes before the kickoff of that game, and you have your super flex open. I mean, if and you have room to move on your flex or one of your receivers around, and we get word that like it's Stetson Bennett and he's starting, it's the whole game for him. I mean, he's 4,500. And you could easily move around and maybe pivot off someone else to get another stud in your lineup. I mean, that's a really interesting GPP strategy there.
It's a nice strategy call because a lot of people don't do this strategy, and I've won many GPPs this way where, if you're paying attention all day and say a chalk goes off and maybe it's somebody you're not playing, or you had one guy get hurt, and then that's where you can make a move to a guy like that, and then you can jump up and spend an extra $2,000 on a receiver or somebody else is playing that slate. So there is ways and reasons you can move later on in the day to give yourself a benefit. And this actually can maybe bring us into running back, because I think, and I don't think JT Daniels is going to play. Everything I'm seeing, I don't think he's gonna, and I don't think he has to against UAB. So I really think now Georgia is just gonna pound that rock. So, he really wasn't on the top of my list, but it does make you talk about a guy like, Zamir White, or a pivot from him to a Kendall Milton, because I mean, a guy like Zamir White, I'm not on him, but man, if they're going to pound a rock that many times, you could get a huge game out of White here, and he's probably going to come across really low owned, right? And especially when it's a late game, so they're going to be running the ball. You know what I mean? And Georgia's not a DFS team to me, but I just think that they're going to be using him a lot. And Kirby Smart likes to play other running back. That's why I brought up Kendall Milton too. I like the Kendall Milton call at 3-2. So White is going to be in play for GPPs, I think, just because he's going to be running.
Yeah, I don't mind White at all. I think he's definitely in line for like, especially if Georgia somehow just keeps lets UAB hang around, and the Georgia's favored by 22.5 in this one right now, and it's actually gone down a couple points since we got this news about JT Daniels being doubtful. So if somehow in the first half, going into the third quarter, fourth quarter, if Georgia's just in like a 1 touchdown game, which is very possible, honestly. I mean, no, Georgia's defense is really good, but if the offense is just struggling to get going, we could have Zamir White just being in there over all the backups, Cook, McIntosh, Milton. It's hard to play any of those guys, honestly. I mean, they're all GPP darts, I think, because they're all backups. But if White's in there just getting, 20 touches, just getting fed the ball, he could easily have 100+ yards, maybe a couple touchdowns, and definitely pay off. You just have to weigh him. So you mentioned, so he's in tournament play, because I think you have to weigh him against some of the other top guys who are cheaper than him, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, let's just go through it. So we got the top price guys in DraftKings. Breece Hall, tough to play against Iowa. I mean, we all love to play Breece Hall, but it's Iowa.
Cheap price.
Yeah, cheap, definitely cheap.
Cash, but he's probably cheap. He's pretty cheap, so GPP only.
Yeah. The cheap price is nice. Kevin Harris for South Carolina, hard to trust for me. He was out last week. Apparently, reportedly, he's going to be in kind of a split backfield for this week. We had Zaquandre White, who had a really game last week, and they're probably still going to use him. I mean, I think they're just going to rotate these guys in. I mean, he's we got a confirmation earlier this week that he's going to play Harris, but I mean, still, it's tough to trust at that price. So I think that's GPP.
Yeah, there's no way, and I'm seeing too that he's on no pitch count. That's what Shane Beamer's saying. But once again, you're right. I'm not going to pay 8 or 7.5 for this, especially when White had a really good game last week also. So I don't think just going to sit the kid after having a really good game. So
I'd rather play Zamir White over Harris, honestly.
Yeah.
So, and then it brings us to Kyron Williams, who I think that's a chalky catch play probably, and I agree.
I just think he's too cheap at that price for. Yeah. And did he have a great week last week? No, but I still think that he's a smash. To me, he's a smash play to slate the running back. Yeah. And
he'll definitely be popular. Yeah.
Yeah, him and Garrett Wilson are two Corey chalky plays. So yeah, he's just a play for me. I mean, we don't have to describe Kyron Williams. We know what we're getting with him.
Yeah, go check out the playbook right now, because I wrote about him there if you want more in depth on him. But he's definitely a top play. But when you compare him even against some of the other guys, so we got Mayan Williams right below him at 7,300, or same price as Kyron Williams. It's tough for me to trust my big price jump for Mayan Williams here. Last week he was definitely a value play for us, but I can't pay 7,300 for him because this backfield's still split. They still have Master Teague. They still have Travion Henderson, and they're gonna be. I mean, they're gonna be passing a lot too. So I just think it's gonna be. It's not like you're paying for a workhorse bell cow back at this price, right?
Right, and if you take away that one touchdown from Mayan Williams, I think he only had like 4 fantasy points.
Yeah.
I mean, not saying he didn't have a horrible game, but and I did see that Ryan Day said he's trimming some fat, and he's actually cutting down on the running backs. He's shortening the running back rotation. So, which I think is probably going to benefit, if anybody, Trayvon Henderson, who looked great on limited snaps and plays.
Yeah, but Henderson's a lot better than Teague, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah, to me, Master Teague I think is an afterthought now. I think it's between Henderson and Williams, but to me, neither of those guys are like main plays. But we'll be talking about Henderson, I think, in a couple weeks. It's pretty much one of the top plays of a slate here.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah. I mean, so like maybe on another slate against a better, just like a more, once we know Williams has more of a share of that workload, like, yeah, I'll play him, but not at that price. I'll wait for him to come down a little bit after probably a down game this year. I mean, GPPs, feel free to roll him out because he could score 3 times because he's in the Ohio State offense, but right. Yeah, tough to trust there. So then, Tyler Goodson, I'm not looking at against Ohio State. Nope. Jarek Broussard is maybe GPP, but Texas A&M defense is tough, so I'm not really looking at that.
And I like Broussard a lot, and I think they're going to have to lean on him in this matchup. Yeah. But you're right, GPP only. But I see Broussard as being sneakier play than people think this week because we know he's going to get to volume. We know they're going to lean on him, but it's going to be against good defense. So you're right, GBP only, but don't sleep on Broussard this week. Yeah.
Okay. Well then, let's get to some of the running backs we do like. So Isaiah Spiller is definitely one for me. Texas A&M's lead back. I mean, so they have Devin Ashane, I think it's how you say it. I mean, Spiller's still the lead guy, right? And I think it's encouraging that last week. He got 17 carries, had 2 receptions, he had 100+ yards, and he could have easily found the end zone once or twice and would be a lot more expensive than he is right now. But he's still like the lead guy. He was doing this time and again last year, just having 100-yard games, and maybe didn't find the end zone as much as we would like, but I still think he's like their lead back, their workhorse. And in this game, you mentioned, so on the road against Colorado, I mean, it could be closer than Vegas is expecting, 17-point favorites for Texas A&M. Last week against Kent State, I know it's the opener or whatever, but they kind of were hanging around against, Texas A&M, Kent State was. So this is a game where maybe Texas A&M pulls away late in the game, in the fourth quarter, but if the game's close throughout, they're going to be leaning on Spiller. They still have a young, new starting quarterback, Texas A&M does, and Haynes King. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Spiller. I think he's one of the top running back plays. 6,700 on DraftKings is very affordable comparatively to all the other running backs we just went through.
He's a lock. I think they're going to lean on him more because it's going to be a more competitive game. And one thing that actually sparked my interest a little bit too is, remember last year A&M's offensive line was terrible, and if you look at grades this week, they're like, I think maybe even top 10 or maybe even higher on the PFF grades. So Spiller to me is a lot. Yeah, he's a lock. He's a lock right there with Williams, and Garrett Wilson and guys like that. So definitely Isaiah Spiller.
Okay.
This next guy I have interest in is Bryant Koback at 6'5". And because I see him being low owned. Once again, played Koback a lot last year, liked him, and I really do think, and we all know how Notre Dame's got this great secondary and great defense, but if they're going to get beat, I think they can get beat on the ground. And the last Florida State I mean, pushed him. You saw what Corbin did. So he had 144, and then Ward. So Kovac, I played Kovac a lot. I watched him a lot last year. I said he's a good runner. He's a violent runner, and also he can work out of the backfield and catch passes too.
Yeah,
he's probably my sleeper sneaky call of the day is Bryant Kovac at 6'5". I'm not sure. I'd have no
like
problem
that.
getting him in my main lineup. I just don't know if I can fit him. But
I like that.
There's a lot of talk about Malik Davis and all that. I mean, problem is like the guy Malik Davis is only 5'6". If Kovac was like $1,000 cheaper, I would have Kovac in every one of my lineups. I'm just not sure about his price. That's the only thing that's scaring me. The kid's a stud.
Yeah,
people really don't know about.
Yeah, the Notre Dame defense. I mean, they got gashed on the ground last week against Florida State. So, and I don't know, maybe it's the opening game. Maybe the defense has a bounce back game here at home, but I mean, I think they could easily allow Toledo to hang around, and
I think they're gonna 5.5 yards per carry.
Yeah,
and he is. I mean, he's a volume eater. I mean, he's gonna get 20 plus touches. So you know what you're getting with him either. So, and I'm not even sure that they don't even know who their RB2 is. So, I like Kovac. A lot at 6'5".
Yeah, he's definitely the headliner for that Toledo offense. So I like that call. Yeah. So by the way, we're just getting some injury news coming in, and by the way, this is what we're going to be doing on Saturdays, giving you injury updates as soon as we get them. Tennessee running back Tyon Evans is out today. This is coming through on Twitter. We got Wes Rucker from GoVols 24/7 reporting that one. So this is Jabari Small probably getting a lot of work in the Tennessee backfield. I still think this is Small is at 5,800. I still think it's kind of he's locked into more touches for sure. And these two guys, Evans and Small, were co-starters last week, and both got plenty of work last week. It bumps Small up for sure and makes him a lot more interesting. I want to get your take on this because for me, I still think it's kind of GPP range, 5,800, but it makes him a lot more interesting where you have to think about it with Evans being out.
Yeah, because
I do think
before workload's going to fall on him, right?
I do think Tennessee might be throwing more. I don't know how much they're going to run it, honestly.
And what's Small's price? Because
Small's 5,800 on DraftKings.
58. You do have to respect the Pitt defense. I mean, we all know that. But anytime you have, now it's going to turn into a bell cow, really, right? I think I think we're actually in a good. I mean, he's in a really good. I mean, he 5.4 yards per carry against Bowling Green. I mean, it's a different competition here, but
easy opponent.
He's playable. I mean, I think he's definitely playable, and he's to me that's close to a cash play. But he's going to get all the touches. So I kind of his projections, his ownership is probably going to jump up a little bit. But
for sure, I mean, people that are tuned into injury news. I mean, Tyon Evans was doubtful or he was questionable coming in with an injury, so maybe people were already looking at Small. And I mean,
5'8", it's
so the
interesting between him and Malik Davis. I see that you wrote up Malik Davis.
Yeah,
you wrote Notre Kane. I was curious about more of your thoughts on Kane too, but this might put a wrench in things a little bit.
Well, let me touch on this because I think even now, honestly, I think if you compare Small to Malik Davis, I'd rather have Malik Davis. I think Florida's gonna have a big lead. They're gonna smash South Florida in this game for sure. We know that, and I think they're gonna do it around a lot. And Malik Davis is the guy that him and Pierce are splitting the lead back duties. Pierce is more of the goal line short yardage guy. And, he's the slightly bigger back than Davis, I think. So, Davis last week he had 104 rushing yards and a touchdown on 14 carries. That's it's a good 7.4 yards per carry average, but it was against an easy opponent against FAU. This is another easy opponent. I could see him having a very similar game to that as he did last week, and they might give him more work. Just giving him more rushing carries than Pierce if they're running out the clock, and it's all of a sudden Davis could break through for a couple touchdowns too. Tennessee, I think they're going to be passing more in this game, honestly. And I always come back to this with with Josh. Is it Josh Heupel? Is that how you say his last name?
Yeah, Heupel. I call
Heupel. So coming over from UCF, he's at Tennessee now. At UCF, I mean, they had a split backfield. Like they did not commit to one guy. They had a lot of talent in the backfield, but they never committed to one guy. And I think even with Small here, they could easily use one of the other backups and bump him up to enough of a workload maybe where it's maybe not as we're expecting, and Small is a bell cow back here. I wouldn't expect Small to be a bell cow in this offense, even though I think the fact that they came in with co-starter designations for Evans and Small, and last week we talked about it earlier. Week 2 is when we find out, all right, what is a team and players? What are they really? Because Tennessee played Bowling Green last week. That's one of the easiest matchups in the country, and Pitt is much better on defense. And
right there,
the fact that Pitt is favored in this game on the road, I think they're going to win and have the lead early, where we're going to see Tennessee maybe throwing to keep pace.
No, I think I kind of agree. Once again, just that Pitt run defense, is top of the line. So, and when you were comparing to, as I was trying to call it up as you were talking, the Florida guys, and I do think if you look last week, even though I think Pierce may have started, but it does look like it's all Malik Davis. I mean, so I wouldn't be worried about people. You see in Pierce stars. Davis went up. He by a lot. He had 19 snaps. Only Pierce is 12. So big edge. He had big edging carries. 14 carries. And Pierce is 6. And huge edge in routes run. And plus he had 104 yards to Pierce's 31. So even though Pierce did have 2 touchdowns, and I've had Davis penciled in most of the week as my play. I just kind of wanted somebody to talk me off him. Because once again, I hate playing these guys that are in a RBBC or questionable. You know what I mean? So, and maybe I can get talked off him. Maybe Malik Davis is the play for cash, because that's kind of how I have penciled in now.
I like Malik Davis a lot more when it's against a team like South Florida, where if this was a conference game and Florida's playing, I don't know, whoever, throw in anybody in that, Tennessee, let's say, where say Florida's only favored by, 10 points going into this game or something, probably by more. But if that's the case, I think I would be maybe a little less off of Davis, but I think in this game, he's just going to get a ton of carries. So that committee backfield. Before we move on to receivers, so we mentioned a little bit, but Noah Kane's another guy I'm looking at. I wrote about him in the playbook. If people want to get some more in-depth talk about him, Penn State's lead running back. I just think they're going to have a lead in a high game here. So I think at 6,400, he's very interesting for me there, and I think cash viable. He's definitely the lead there. I know they have other bodies there in the backfield, but he's the guy. So I like him a lot. Let's go to receivers here. I mean, top guys, so let's talk about Ohio State's receiving core first. Chris Olave versus Garrett Wilson. Last week Wilson was a lot more expensive than Olave, and we hammered Olave in there, and he paid off.
Yep.
This week, DraftKings has gone the other way here, and Wilson is the more affordable guy here. He's 5,900, and you mentioned it before. He's going to be very popular and probably just a lock in cash because he's going to be so popular. So, I mean, maybe not much analysis on that, but Olave, he's just GPP. 7,200 isn't bad, though.
But a great GPP play because everybody's going to be flocking to Wilson. They're going to see that price. They're all going to go in. And remember, usually Olave is the one who usually outscores Wilson. So, Wilson, you got to play Wilson in cash. I just think, especially if the guy goes off, has 3 touchdowns, and he's 50% owned, and you're not playing, you're screwed. So, but GPPs, I'm going to pivot right to Olave and roll because people are going to forget about Olave. They're just going to be mesmerized by that Wilson price, even in GPPs. So, Olave's are playing GPPs.
Yeah. So I like that, and especially if you're pairing them with Stroud. I mean, those two could easily connect for multiple touchdowns. And we saw late in the game last week against Minnesota where Stroud eventually was like, all right, Olave's the top playmaker, my top weapon here. So I'm going to target him. And he's just a playmaker in open space there and probably will be doing some damage against Oregon. So I like that for sure. We had some injury news earlier today before we went live. Oklahoma State's receiving core. We have Tate Martin, who's questionable, and this game kicks off at 12 Eastern, noon Eastern here coming up in about 45 minutes. Tate Martin, questionable. He's their number 1 receiver. And then Braden Johnson is out, as is Logan Carter, the tight end. He is out. So if Tate Martin is out, and we should have clarity hopefully soon on this, but if he is indeed out, then we have all of a sudden have Brennan Presley at 5,600, who's interesting. Bryson Green is at 3,300 and is also interesting. Jaden Bray. I mean, I think these guys are GPP options. Maybe Presley is the more proven of the guys. He had 4 catches for 68 last week and was the Oklahoma State second leading receiver, but Spencer Sanders expected back for Oklahoma State. So yeah, I feel like he's going to be running more, but I don't really know. We mentioned this before we went live. I don't know what to do with this Oklahoma State offense. And this is going back multiple years now.
Oh, and definitely. I mean, I guess the good news is Sanders is back, but I'm actually looking right now at Bryson Green at 3K as a cash play because, I mean, the guy, and it's not like he didn't play much last week and all these guys are out, and now we just think that Green's going to play. If you look last week, now Green actually had just as many targets as Tate Martin against Missouri State. So, and now I'd be more worried if I had Illingworth throwing to him. But now we got the guy Sanders, who's the leader of the team, actually throwing to him. Green may actually, because usually when I make cash lineups every week, I usually have that 1 3K receiver or the 1 pump. Of course, is it safe? No. But when the guy, played last week and had targets last week, and now half the team is out, they're gonna throw to him. I mean, we think. I don't want to, I'm not saying it's a done deal, but I think that Green could actually maybe fit us into. We can get another higher dollar play that we want maybe with Green in there at 3K. I mean, we throw in a Green like we're talking, which actually can just kind of slide into my other value plays. I might end up with 2 value plays in that slate, and I think we both agree on this one. And I'm not sure about ownership because I didn't look. Is the tight end from Pittsburgh, Lucas Kroll?
Yeah,
I believe you wrote him up, right? Did you rate him up in your playbook?
Yeah, Lucas Kroll. Yeah,
and I was very surprised because so you're on him. I thought it was more sneaky on Kroll because I think he gets a lot of snaps, right? And he is 3,700. He had the second most snaps of all offensive skill position guys last week.
Yep, he went for five catches for 58 yards and a touchdown. Connected with Pickett on that one, and I mean he's the Pitt receiving core has a lot of guys there that we know from recent years, so it's tough to see where he's going to fit in throughout
But
the whole
Whipple does like
season.
his tight end, so
Yeah, Whipple likes the tight ends, and Jordan Addison is definitely the top guy here, and he had a breakout year last year, but they still got Taysier Mack, they got Jared Wayne, Jacques Louis, all guys that could pop off and catch a touchdown today. Cruel looks like he's got the volume though, at least if even if he's not going to score. I like that he's looking like he's going to be a top target. And you mentioned so this, the tight end and the Whipple offense for Pitt is going to be probably something we are going to get used to for this whole season with Cruel. So I don't mind. I like that at all. I mean, I like that a lot. I wrote about it in the playbook. So like, I definitely like that. When you compare him to, I'd probably play him over the Oklahoma State. The Oklahoma State guys, you just don't know where the production's going to go. And even with their backfield, we didn't even touch on any of the running backs because, I mean, I wrote about Jalen Warren in the playbook if you want to check that out because I think he's an interesting guy, being so much cheaper than LD Brown. But the receivers, I mean, last year we saw, the last couple of years, like if it wasn't Tylan Wallace, everybody else was a guessing game. So I think that's how it is again. And even though there's guys out, and if Tay Martin's out, it makes the situation even more a little bit clear. But I think I'll stay away in cash for sure. But I don't mind it at all in GPPs if you're going Bryson Green. He's very cheap. So another.
I'm sorry. There's a few values. I mean, the Penn State guys.
Yeah. Well, I was going to mention a couple other cheap guys we could just go through real quick. I mean, the Penn State guys for sure. So we got Parker Washington is 4K, and Keandre Lambert Smith is 3,900. So basically the same price.
And that was going to be my question to you.
Yeah.
Because maybe now it's when this other value just popped up for Oklahoma State, but obviously Parker Washington is still I believe the WR2, but it looks like the other kid got more. Lambert Smith, I got it up now. So he had 5 targets. Washington had 6 last week. They both had 4 receptions. Who do you play between the two of them? Because I was almost leaning toward one of them in the main lineup because you want to piece that Penn State with Clifford, both the same price. I think Parker Washington's probably still the safer play for cash. Am I wrong? Am I right? I mean, I don't. Or what do you?
I think why I'd rather go Washington than Lambert Smith in cash.
I have a higher ceiling too, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so what happened last week was they both had 4 receptions. Lambert Smith 71 yards. He had a 52-yard catch, that makes up for most of that yardage.
Yeah,
so
if
you take that away, I think Washington's ceiling, Washington had 4 for 47, averaging 10 yards a catch. I think when you compare those two, I'd rather have Washington just $100 more expensive. So it's kind of like, you're basically choosing between the two. I mean, it's either or in this situation. I wouldn't play both, but if you're looking to pair one with Clifford, I'd rather pair one of those than Dotson for being 7K. I mean, Dotson's always in play. He's one of the best. He's one of the best playmakers at receiver in the country. But I think I'd just rather go elsewhere if I'm paying up for guys, especially at running back on the slate and quarterback. So if you're looking at for cheap receivers, I would rather do one of the Penn State guys. By the way, while we're down here in this range, because I mean this is always what we're looking for. One of these cheap guys to pop off, hopefully. I didn't write about it in the playbook, but this is when I was diving into more research. I completely forgot about this guy, J.D. Spielman for TCU. He's mid-price. He's 3K, and I don't know why he's 3K. Maybe I just overlooked him because he's that low, but he caught a touchdown last week from Max Duggan. So even though it was a blowout win, and the starters only played about a half, so while he was in the game, he caught a touchdown from Dugan. And it was Dugan's only passing touchdown. So it's like that's a little bit notable to me. And Spielman, he's been one of the top playmakers in the country. He's had his stats haven't always been there. And bounced from Nebraska. Now he's in TCU. I mean, he's a talent that could easily smash 3K, and this might be the lowest we see him all year. I mean, he could have 5 catches today and easily have 15 DraftKings points, and next week he's, probably in the 5 to 6K range, maybe, especially if he finds the end zone again.
That was the other name I was going to ask you about too, and I just don't know. I mean, you look at the targets last week, and they're pretty much evenly dispersed. With those guys, and then between like Tay Barber and Conright, Brooks, Spielman, they're all part of that rotation. And I was like, how do I differentiate you guys? I mean, it looks like Tay Barber. I don't know whatever happened to him. But I'm kind of interested in Spielman too, because I mean, maybe Barber should be considered this week. But after Jalen Reagor went to the NFL, I don't know where else you go. But he had that touchdown. He had 16-yard touchdown last week. Yeah, that's right. And at 3K, to me, it just seems like there's too many cooks in the kitchen right now in that offense. But once again, when you're looking at, what you're going to say, he's only 3K. So, but once again, I would probably still lean toward Spielman's probably the more talented player. But I keep going back to this Oklahoma State kid when I know where he's definitely going to be seeing, action and targets. But we could be talking about Spielman next week at 5K because he had, let me see. So he had 2 targets. Yeah, this is crazy. They all had 2 targets besides Johnson at 7. Every one of them. I'm looking Noel, Spielman, Barber, Henderson, Conright, Gunnar Henderson. I forgot about Gunnar Henderson. Mayan Williams. All these guys have like 2 or 3 targets. So that's why he's 3K, I guess.
I get it. But
10 guys.
I just thought the name, maybe he'd be the name factor would have him up a little bit more, but
me too. I totally agree with you. I was thinking the same thing. Because there's a name there.
Yeah. It's definitely worth another look, and that's why I bring him up now, even though I didn't even write about it in the playbook, because I was like, wow, JD Spielman's 3K.
You know another sneaky play, and not to change the subject, but I just saw the name pop up.
No, go for it.
That thing is the RB3 for Florida is DeMarcus Bowman from Clemson.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking if this is a blowout, and he did see 4 carries, 20 yards last year. This is totally for multi-entering and all that kind of stuff. But that's just another name too, DeMarcus Bowman at 3K.
That's definitely an option. I think obviously any backup running back in a blowout, with a team as the big favorite is in play for sure. I mean, I think it's a different case with Florida, as you mentioned. Just being, I think, just getting a ton of work because he's a younger guy, and maybe they don't want to play Pierce and Davis as much. I mean, the second half, if Florida's up by 30 points in the second half, then why would they run out their starting running backs when you got an SEC schedule coming up, and they probably want to have them healthy for their bigger games. So I don't mind that at all, and he's definitely cheap enough. 3K. So just looking at before we wrap up, I mean, out of all the expensive receivers, are there any that you definitely love over any others? I mean, we got Aeneas Smith for Texas A&M is obviously one of the top playmakers in the country, and he went off last week. Could easily go off here. He's maybe a little too expensive for my liking. I hate that Michael Mayer is this expensive now for Notre Dame because he had a huge game last week, but last year he was when he was sitting in the 5K and lower range, I would loved him, but this year not. I mean, he's probably going to stay priced up there because he's the number 1 target in that offense now. So I'm not really interested in him at that price.
Well, obviously, I'm going to go cheaper at receivers with Wilson. I got to run Wilson in 2 values. But the other name I didn't bring up, and I got to bring up, is Tosh Harris for Syracuse. I just think it's way too cheap for 5-1. Now, he usually gets 15 targets a game. They didn't need that last week. He ran 17 routes at 8 targets. But normally they're going to be trailing, in Syracuse, and he's going to get the 12 targets. This could be, to me, this is a really sneaky game, this Rutgers-Syracuse game. Really sneaky. I mean, we didn't even talk too much about it, but I love the Rutgers guys like Bo Melton. I like the running back. I think the running back for Rutgers is a sneaky play that most people really ain't talking about. Tucker Purcell's good runner, but especially Taj Harris. Said they didn't need him last week. I don't think you're never going to see Taj Harris 5-1 again this cheap. But the box score doesn't show that Harris was inches away from two more touchdowns last week. So they narrowly connected. It was on a corner route in the end zone on one in the second quarter, and then a deep ball went right through his hands in the third quarter. So we could be talking about Harris having a huge game last week, and then he could be 7-1 or whatever. So Taj Harris at 5-1. He's going to be in some of my lineups. I just think he's too cheap and he's too good. Too bad Tommy DeVito sucks, the quarterback. But DeVito wasn't too bad last week. So I think that's going to be a sneaky game of the week, Rutgers-Syracuse.
I like that. Yeah. And while we're on that note, just a couple other guys I wanted to throw out were as the Ball State receivers. We talked about earlier, Drew Plitt.
Yes.
I mean, Justin Hall, even Johannes Tyler are Hall's more expensive, but they're both kind of affordable, and I think Tyler is more cash. He's $4,200, but Hall for GPP is $6,300. I mean, this guy could smash easily. So I don't mind either of those guys, especially if you just kind of want maybe a lower owned stack with Plitt. That might be a nice way to go, especially if you get some Penn State. You got some Clifford in your lineup or one of the Penn State receivers. Don't mind.
I like about Hall is he gets some catches on his fly sweeps also. 4 carries last week. So
he does.
Definitely. I always like Ball State, so I like playing those guys. But yeah, I think it's good. I like Jordan Addison. I think Addison's great, but GBP, like Dotson's great GBP, Olabi, great GBP. But it's going to come down to picking those 2 or 3 value plays of being right. And I think it comes down to, am I going to play Bryson Green, or am I going to go a little bit different direction and go like Jabari Small at running back? You know what I mean? So it's just those 2 or 3 decisions I got to make like the next half hour to figure this out.
Yeah. By the way, so we had Tay Martin for Oklahoma State. It looks like he is who is this? This is a reporter for Oklahoma State. He is in full uniform warming up. So, he was questionable coming in, but take that as you will. Maybe he plays the whole game, maybe he doesn't. So
yeah.
Something to note there. And no other big injury news yet. So, I mean, keep an eye out. We're going to be in the Discord coming up here. Keep an eye on my Twitter feed. I try to retweet some of the big injury news. Maybe one of the other things to note just before we sign off here, Zeb Noland from South Carolina. He's the quarterback. He will time. So yeah, just keep all that in mind once you're making your lineups here, and we'll hit us up in the Fantasy Alarm Discord. Me and Pete will both be in there. Check out Pete's Night Slate playbook. Real quick, just give us maybe one team or one player you're definitely locking in from that slate. I mean, I encourage everyone to go check out your playbook for all the full breakdown, but just give us a quick play.
Actually, I think it's a good slate. You can pretty much make the lineup you want. I think you get some really good plays. I think like Bijan Robinson, of course, is a core play.
Yeah.
Vice one, I'm not saying it's a sneaky play, but I think you got 2 misprices. Tyler Beatty from Beatty for Mississippi, the running back, I think is a misprice. And then Malik Cunningham, I think, is real cheap on DK as the quarterback. Yeah, so check it out. It's going to be a really good slate. The only thing that gets me is this FanDuel. They have like 3. They're both like 8-game slates, but they have like 3 or 4 different 3 games different for each. So it was a tough one right now, but it's a good slate, and I think I mean, my adopted team this year, I think, is going to be Kentucky. I'm really like this Kentucky team, man, with his Levi's and Chris Rodriguez and Wandale Robinson being there. So I think Kentucky is going to be my adopted team this year for college.
Wandale Robinson's been one of my favorite players the last couple of years.
Yeah, I love the guy. So now I can watch my Kentucky.
All right, well, yeah, check that out and maybe get some Wandale in your lineup too.
There you go. So to me, the big question is Ty Martin. So I got to decide on Ty Martin. What am I going to do now?
I know.
Bryson Green, because I had Green penciled in as we were talking. So I got some decisions to make here.
Well, good. Yeah, join us in the Discord if you got questions about lineups, last minute lineup building here. We're going to sign off just to make sure we get ours in. But throughout the day, Pete has the night slate playbook, as we mentioned. So he'll be answering some specific questions there. I'll be in there to help out as well. But let's just have fun on this week 2 college football. Appreciate you guys joining us here on the college football live stream, and we're gonna be doing this every Saturdays moving forward. By the way, just a quick reminder: dfsalarm.com/getcfb. You save 25% with the code NCAA to get that college football DFS package. Me and Pete will be taking you guys all throughout the whole season. We had playbooks and plays last night for the Friday night slate. We got all day today, games going on. So join us over at Fantasy Alarm, and appreciate you guys joining us. Pete, I'll talk to you soon, I hope, and we'll dominate today.
All right, good luck, guys. Good luck.
All right, see you guys.
All right.